There is a 4 million home-sized hole in the middle of the American economy, and if you're under 40, you're currently standing right in it. It's not just that prices are high. The math no longer works. We're forming families faster than we're pouring concrete. This structural deficit is literally pricing the American dream out of existence. Cities you grew up in are becoming gated communities for the wealthy. Even suburbs are hitting a pricing ceiling, forcing young families to make impossible choices. Today, millions of younger Americans are being priced out before they even start. The cities and neighborhoods they knew are disappearing. And this is only the beginning. What happens next will change where your family lives forever. The housing shortage didn't appear overnight. Decades of underbuilding and restrictive policies have slowly created a 4 million home gap across the country. Every year, millions of new households form, but the number of new homes barely keeps pace. The math is stacking against younger generations, leaving them squeezed out of neighborhoods they grew up in. Builders face skyrocketing land costs, labor shortages, and mountains of red tape that slow construction to a crawl. Even when homes are built, prices are climbing faster than wages. Neighborhoods that were once affordable are becoming playgrounds for the wealthy. Middle-class families now scroll listings they can never afford. Rent is also skyrocketing. Millions of families spend over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. If nothing changes, entire generations risk being locked out of homeownership. But today, we'll reveal exactly why this shortage exists and who's profiting from the housing crisis. Today's housing crisis didn't start recently. To understand it, we have to go back to the 2008 financial crash, when America's home building industry suddenly collapsed. Construction projects across the country stopped almost overnight. Entire housing developments were left unfinished. Before the crash, builders were constructing nearly 2 million homes every year. Then the housing market collapsed and construction fell dramatically. Banks stopped lending to developers, and builders stopped starting new projects. The crash didn't just pause construction. It wiped out thousands of small developers and construction companies. Many builders left the industry entirely, and a huge part of America's home building workforce disappeared. Years later, the economy recovered. But home building never fully returned to its old pace. Developers became more cautious, and fewer homes were built each year than the country actually needed. Meanwhile, America's population kept growing. Millions of young adults were forming new households every year. More families needed places to live, but the number of homes simply wasn't keeping up. And slowly, year after year, the gap kept widening. More families were looking for homes, but fewer homes were being built. And that imbalance eventually created the massive housing shortage we see today. But here's what most people don't realize. The housing shortage in America isn't just the result of the 2008 crash, because even today, in many cities, building new homes is far more difficult than it should be. Across large parts of the United States, local zoning laws strictly control what can be built, and in many neighborhoods, these rules only allow single-family houses instead of higher-density housing. That means apartments, duplexes, and smaller, more affordable homes are often restricted. So even as the population grows, the total number of homes that can legally be built remains limited. While this might sound like a technical policy issue, the real-world impact is massive, because when cities limit housing supply, demand continues rising and puts constant pressure on prices. As demand grows faster than supply, buyers are forced to compete with each other, driving home prices higher and making it increasingly difficult for average families to afford housing. Economists now argue that zoning restrictions are one of the biggest reasons America hasn't been able to build enough homes to keep up with population growth. But even when new homes are built today, there's another problem. Most of them are no longer designed for average buyers, but for those who can afford much higher prices. Builders are increasingly focusing on larger, more expensive homes because rising land costs, materials, and labor make smaller, affordable housing far less profitable. In many cities, the price of land alone has increased so much that building affordable homes often doesn't make financial sense for developers anymore. At the same time, construction costs have surged over the past decade, driven by labor shortages, supply chain issues, and rising material prices. As a result, developers often choose to build high-end homes, where profit margins are larger, instead of smaller homes that middle-class families can afford. And this creates a market where more homes are being built, but fewer of them are actually affordable, pushing millions of buyers further out of reach of homeownership. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the housing shortage isn't hurting everyone equally, and in many cases, it's actually benefiting a specific group of buyers. In recent years, large investors and corporations have been buying thousands of homes across the United States, turning them into long-term rental properties. In some markets, these investors are able to outbid regular families by offering cash deals, faster closings, and fewer conditions. That means when an average buyer tries to purchase a home, they're not just competing with other families. They're competing with companies that have far more financial power. As more homes are bought by investors, fewer are available for ownership, which pushes prices even higher and makes it harder for new buyers to enter the market. And as this trend continues, the housing market slowly shifts, from a place where people buy homes to live in to a system where more people are forced to rent instead. But here's the question that matters now. If buying a home keeps getting harder, what does that mean for the next generation trying to build a stable life? For many young adults, homeownership is no longer a starting point. It's becoming something they may not reach until much later, or sometimes not at all. Instead of building equity through ownership, more people are spending years in the rental system, where monthly payments don't create long-term financial security. And over time, that shift quietly changes how wealth is built, because owning property has historically been one of the main ways families grow financially. So when fewer people are able to buy, the gap between those who own assets and those who don't can begin to widen even further. And that raises a bigger question. If this trend continues, what kind of future housing system are we actually moving toward? Most Americans don't realize who actually ends up controlling the housing market over time. It's not random. Those with capital gradually gain more influence over homes. When fewer people can afford to buy, large investors and companies begin to dominate the market. Average renters are left with less stability and fewer choices. For many families, this shift isn't obvious at first. Rents slowly rise, affordable homes vanish, and the pressure of finding a place to live reshapes daily life. Over the past decade, younger adults have fallen behind in home ownership. While older generations steadily built equity, many millennials and Gen Z renters are being priced out entirely. Some families continue to grow wealth through property, while millions struggle with tight markets and rising costs. Two very different realities are forming at the same time. The real question is whether home ownership will remain within reach for most younger Americans, or if the dream of owning a home will look completely different soon. Housing challenges aren't just numbers, they affect daily lives. Cities are testing solutions like zoning reform, co-living spaces, and small-scale developments to keep homes affordable. Investors and developers make decisions that can lock families out or open doors. Every project, every policy, shapes who can buy and who must keep renting. Communities are pushing back. Local campaigns fight for fair housing laws, new construction approvals, and protections against displacement. Technology is changing the game. Urban planning software, AI tools, and data analytics help cities plan smarter, but the results depend on human choices. Families face competing pressures, rising interest rates, limited inventory, and demand from wealthier buyers. Decisions today determine financial futures for decades. The key question remains: can policy, innovation, and community action restore access to homes, or will inequality continue to grow? The outcome affects everyone trying to build a life in America.